You are listening to Perfect English with Danny. Improve your English every day. Never stop learning. Welcome to a new episode from Perfect English with Danny. In this episode, we will talk about common mistakes. And we will focus on some keywords. And these are on, radio, signature, win, help, criteria, use, most, died, and death. Now, why I chose these 10 words? Because of a conversation my friend Tony had with me the other day, and I picked up those 10 common mistakes in his conversation. Now, we're going to listen to what he said to me the other day. He was telling me about a sports show that he watched on TV, and he was so excited about the signing of Davis in the Los Angeles Lakers, and now we're going to listen to the whole story, but I want you to pay attention to the 10 common mistakes that he's going to make in his initial conversation. After we listen to the conversation, I'm going to explain to you the mistakes and how we can fix them, and at the end of the episode, we're going to listen to Tony saying again what he said, but in perfect English. So first, let's hear what Tony told me about that sports show he watched on television. And then I will start pointing out the mistakes and explaining to you how these can be fixed. But as a challenge for you, try to figure out as many mistakes as you can before I point them out to see if you can catch the mistakes as I did. And now let's listen to what Tony told me the other day.
On last Friday, I was watching a sports show in the television. I was so excited about the signature of the new contract of Anthony Davis with the Los Angeles Lakers. Now with LeBron, they can win any team in the NBA. LeBron is a top player, but he needed a help from another all-star player. Last season was disastrous for the Lakers. Well, I know there were many criterias that led to the bad season they had, but I was not used to see LeBron struggling like that. The most people I know are Lakers fans, and we were so happy when LeBron moved to the Lakers, but it didn't work last year. Maybe this year our luck will change. After that sports show, I tried to watch the news, but I couldn't stand more than 5 minutes. It was all about negative and tragic things. They were talking about the number of people who were died because of civil wars last year and the deaths of Ebola virus last year. I couldn't continue watching as they wanted to talk about more death and suffering. It's not that I don't care, I do, but it is frustrating because I can't do anything about it.
So, that was what Tony told me the other day. Could you identify the mistakes? What, did you get 5, 6? All the 10 of them? If you got the 10 of them, that would be perfect, because that means you picked all the mistakes that I picked when he told me that. Anyway, if you got half of them, none of them, or all of them, I'm here to help, as I help my friend Tony to improve his English and correcting the mistakes in what he said. Now, let me point the mistakes first, and then we will talk in details about them. Now, Tony started by saying on last Friday. That was the first. What do you think he should say? Then he went on saying, I was watching a sports show in the television. In the television is another mistake. How can we fix that? Then he said, I was so excited about the signature of the new contract of Anthony Davis. Well, the signature of the new contract is not actually right. What should we say instead? Then he said, they can win any team in the NBA. We can't say they can win any team in the NBA. That's wrong. How should we fix that? Then he said, LeBron is a top player, but he needed a help from another all-star player. We can't say he needed a help. What should we say? Then he said, I know there were many criterias that led to the bad season they had. We don't say criterias. Why not? What should we say instead? And then he said, I was not used to see LeBron struggling like that. Why? This is wrong. We can't say used to see. Well, then what should we say? What's wrong with this one? Then he said, the most people I know are Lakers fans. Well, we don't say the most people I know. What should we say instead? What's wrong with this? Then he moved on talking about the news, and he said they were talking about the number of people who were died because of civil wars. And we don't say people who were died. What should we say instead? Then he said the deaths of Ebola virus last year. Again, the deaths of Ebola virus is wrong. What should we say instead? Maybe you have an idea. Maybe you're not quite sure how we should correct these mistakes, and that's what we're here to do. Let's start with our first keyword, and that is on. I'm going to give you a couple of examples with mistakes. We're going to identify the mistakes and fix the mistakes. On last Monday, we went to the Railway Museum. On every Saturday morning, we go shopping. Now, the problem here is usually confusing because when we talk about prepositions of time, we know that we say at a specific time, like at 7:30. If we want to talk about the morning, the evening, we say in the morning or in the evening. But if we want to talk about days, we say on. We say on Monday, on Friday, I will see you on Saturday, I will take a day off on Thursday, etc. That's true. We do use on with days, but only when we use the day on its own. When we say on Monday, that's fine. If we just say on Monday, that's okay, but not when we say on last Monday. When we say last Monday, that should go on its own. We don't put on with it. If we say every Saturday, it's not Saturday alone. Remember, if we just say Saturday, we can say on Saturday morning, we will go shopping. But every Saturday, because in this case we use every with Saturday, we can't put on. We should only use every Saturday. And that is exactly what happened to our friend when he said on last Friday. So here for these two sentences I just told you about, we should say last Monday we went to the railway station, not on last Monday. And for the second sentence, we should say every Saturday morning we go shopping, not on every Saturday morning. And of course, for Tony, instead of saying on last Friday, he should say simply last Friday without on. And now let's move to the second mistake or the second keyword. You might have noticed that I said the second keyword is radio and I just used television here, because they are the same in this case. He said I was watching a sports show in the television. Well, before we talk about this, I'll give you a couple of examples which have similar mistakes, and we will try to see it from there. What the mistake is, how we should fix it. I always listen to the news in the radio. On radio, there was a current affairs program. Well, here we have two different types of mistakes, and that's why my keyword was radio, because if it were television, the second example would be okay. The thing is that we don't say in the radio, we say on the radio, or we say on the television. But for the television, we can say on the television or on television without the. But for radio, we always say on the radio. So the first sentence, I always listen to the news in the radio, we know it's a mistake because we don't say in. We say on the radio. The second sentence, the mistake was on radio. We don't say on radio on its own without the. We should say on the radio. So the sentences should be, I always listen to the news on the radio, not in the radio. And in the second sentence, on the radio there was a current affairs program, not just on radio without the. Our friend here did the same, but for the television. He said, I was watching a sports show in the television. We know we don't use in when we talk about television or radio. He should say, I was watching a sports show on the television. He could say on television without the, or he could leave the. That's not a big deal. And now we'll move to the next mistake, and that is with the word signature. He said, I was so excited about the signature of the new contract of Anthony Davis. Well, the problem here is with the word signature itself. Let's understand it more. I'll give you an example and we will talk about this example. The signature of the new protocol took place in Rio de Janeiro. Signature means your name, written in the way that you usually write it on a check, a business letter, etc. These letters need your signature, Mr. Ross, for example. Or you can tell by the signature if the painting is genuine. That's also a good use or a correct use of the word signature. but to refer to the event at which two or more people sign a legal or formal agreement, we don't use the word signature, we use signing. For example, we say the signing of the peace agreement is scheduled to take place in Zurich at the end of the month, not the signature. And the same goes for the contract. And the same goes for this example I just told you about when we said the signature of the new protocol. So here in this example, we should fix it by saying the signing of the new protocol took place in Rio de Janeiro, not the signature. And the same goes for our friend Tony. He said the signature of the new contract of Anthony Davis with the Los Angeles Lakers. He should say the signing of the new contract of Anthony Davis, not the signature. And now let's move to the next mistake when he used the word win in a wrong way. He said now with LeBron, they can win any team in the NBA. Let me give you this example. We have never won the American team, which is pretty much similar to what Tony was saying. Note that we can win a game, we can win a match, race, competition, election, etc. For example, we can say United have won 4 of their last 5 matches, or who won the FA Cup last year. We can do that. We're talking about match, we're talking about a competition like the FA Cup. But if you want to talk about a person, a team, or a group in a game, match, race, competition, election, etc., we don't use win, we use beat. So we say, for example, they're a good side, but I'm sure we can beat them. Not we can win them. Because if you win them, that means you take them with you. You take them home with you. You can't say, for example, I won Roger Federer last week when we played tennis. What do you mean you won Roger Federer? Did you take Roger Federer with you home? No, of course not. You beat Roger Federer, that's right. You win a trophy, you win Wimbledon, you win Roland Garros, you win a competition, that's right, because you take the trophy home. Or at least the record is yours. But you can't win a person or a team because they're simply not yours. So I'll go back to the example I just gave you and I will fix it. Instead of saying we have never won the American team, we should say we have never beaten the American team. And so our friend Tony should say the same. Instead of saying they can win any team in the NBA, he should say they can beat any team in the NBA. Then we have the next mistake when he said, but he needed a help. He was talking about LeBron as a top player, but he needed a help from another all-star player. Now take a look at this example. Remember to call me if you need a help. Well, help is usually an uncountable noun. We say, for example, do you want some help? Or he doesn't like asking for help. However, there is a phrase when we say be a great or tremendous help, but that is a very specific phrase. We use it only this way. We say, for example, thanks for coming and looking after the children. You've been a great help. Or it would be a great help if you could just address all the envelopes. So in this specific expression, yes, we can use a, but when we talk about help in general, it's an uncountable noun. So in this example I just gave you, we should say, remember to call me if you need help, not if you need a help, because here we're talking about help in general. And the same goes for what Tony said. Tony said he needed a help from another all-star player, and that's not correct. He's talking about help in general here, and in this context, it's uncountable. So LeBron is a top player, but he needed help from another all-star player. And now for the next mistake. He said, well, I know there were many criterias that led to the bad season they had. The problem in this sentence is the word criteria itself. Now, the thing is, criteria is actually the plural of criterion. So, criteria is already plural. It doesn't take an S. It's like making it plural twice. So, here for example, we say the company's sole criterion of success is high sales. Criterion is one, sole criterion. Or we say these new criteria make it easier to get a visa. So here, new criteria, that's plural. We don't need an S with that. And neither does our friend Tony. He shouldn't use an S with criterias because criteria is already plural. He should simply say, I know there were many criteria, not criterias, criteria that led to the bad season they had. And now let's move to the next mistake. Tony said, I was not used to see LeBron struggling like that. Now, I will give you an example. We'll talk a little about it, and then we will see why this is wrong. It took me a long time to get used to the local accent. Now, here, of course, the problem is a little bit bigger than our friend Tony, because he said get used, not get used to. The problem here should be fixed by simply saying get used to the local accent. But if you notice, after get used to, we used a noun, not a verb. It's not like when we say I used to. I used to is a different thing. I used to, when we talk about a past habit that does not exist in the present anymore, like when I say I used to play football. That means that was back in the days when I was younger. But now I don't play football anymore. If you just say I used to, not I am used to. You don't use verb to be with that. But here, our friend Tony said, I was not used to see. If you use this expression, be not used or be used, obviously, to see is wrong. You have to use a noun, or if you want to use the verb, you need to use it in ing form. So here, Tony should say, I was not used to seeing LeBron struggling like that. And be, or we can also say get used to doing something, means to get into the habit of doing, hearing, or seeing something so that it no longer seems strange or difficult. Now, for Tony, it was difficult because he was not used to seeing his hero LeBron struggling like that. But it happened anyway. So here, the idea is get into the habit of hearing, doing, seeing something so that it no longer seems strange. If you want to use a verb, do use a verb, but put ing to the verb. So here our friend should say, I was not used to seeing LeBron. Now for the next mistake, and that is when he said, the most people I know. When you want to use most, and that means nearly all, and obviously this is what Tony meant in this context, he wanted to say nearly all the people I know are Lakers fans. He used most, but he put the with most. Well, actually, when you mean nearly all, use most, not the most. You say, for example, most universities provide a wide range of courses. You say, where I come from, most teachers have to teach at 2 schools in order to earn enough, but you don't say the most. The most is a common expression when you want to talk about superlative. He's the most expensive player in the world. This is the most beautiful hotel in the world. Here you're talking about the best, superlative use of most. But in this case, we're talking about most in the meaning of nearly all. We don't use the. He should simply say, most people I know are Lakers fans. Simple enough. And now let's move to the next mistake when he used were died. He said they were talking about the number of people who were died because of civil wars. Now, the problem is he used the verb to be with died as if it were passive. Now, when you want to talk about dying as the event of dying, you just use die. You used die without verb to be. If you want to talk about the state of being dead, you say be dead, not die, not be died. It doesn't work this way. Compare these two examples. He died in an ambulance on the way to hospital. We said he died. We didn't say he was died because that is the event of dying. But when we want to say a state, by the time the ambulance reached the hospital, he was dead. Not he was died, he was dead. So here our friend should simply say the number of people who died because of civil wars last year. And then he continued on talking about death and said the deaths of Ebola virus last year. Now the problem here is the choice of preposition. He said deaths of Ebola virus. Actually, when we want to talk about death because of a disease, we use from, not of. We say deaths from a disease. For example, the increase in the number of deaths from malaria was causing concern. And malaria is a disease, Ebola is a disease. So here our friend Tony should say the deaths from Ebola virus last year. And that was all about correcting the mistakes in what Tony told me last week. Now let's hear it again from Tony because he said the same thing again in correct, in perfect English.
Hi again. I'm going to tell you again about what happened last Friday, but this time I'm going to correct my mistakes and I'm going to use perfect English. Last Friday, I was watching a sports show on the television. I was so excited about the signing of the new contract of Anthony Davis with the Lakers. Now, with LeBron, they can beat any team in the NBA. LeBron is a top player, but he needed help from another all-star player. Last season was disastrous for Lakers. Well, I know there were many criteria that led to the bad season they had, but I was not used to seeing LeBron struggling like that. Most people I know are Lakers fans, and we were so happy when LeBron moved to the Lakers, but it didn't work last year. Maybe this year our luck will change. After that sports show, I tried to watch the news, but I couldn't stand more than 5 minutes. It was all about negative and tragic things. They were talking about the number of people who died because of civil wars last year and the deaths from Ebola virus last year. I couldn't continue watching as they wanted to talk more about death and suffering. It's not that I don't care. I do care, but it is frustrating because I can't do anything about it. So, what do you think? Do you think it's perfect now?
Well, actually, it is perfect, Tony. Thank you very much for sharing a story with us in the first place, and thank you very much for sharing the corrected story in perfect English. And that's all we have to say for today. I hope you found the 10 common mistakes we focused on in today's episode interesting and useful, and Tony's story will play a big role in remembering those mistakes, because if you can't remember the words or if you can't remember the exact mistakes, when you remember Tony's story, you will remember all of them and you won't be making the same mistakes anytime soon. This is Danny, your host, saying thank you very much for listening to another episode from Perfect English with Danny. I will see you in the next episode.